So, before we get into gaming or any other stuff, I wanted to talk about something that was asked in one of our posts. There was a number of really great people that put forth questions and wanted to discuss certain things, and I figured it was probably a good idea to do that and go over these things, right? Discuss them and get kind of into the nuance, so to speak, right? So, what I want to talk about tonight is TERF dog whistles. There is language and there's a lexicon for these folks, and I think it's very important that we understand it. So what I'm going to say to this is that I know we have a fairly small group tonight, but I'm still going to make it clear. Trigger warning for transphobia, misgendering, and anything else I'm not thinking of. I'm also probably going to be bringing up Nazis and the far right because TERFs have a bad habit of working with them. So what I wanted to explore was this. So I went online and I found this WordPress article. It was a bit of content from womans.cusu called How to Spot TERF Ideology Text Only. Right? And so we're going to get into this. So we all know what a TERF is, right? Trans-Exclusionary radical feminist. They like to also call themselves gender critical. They also like to claim that they undergo some sort of sex-based oppression. They claim they're biological females. Yeah, it's a bunch of nonsense. While they are natal females, they are biology is a very interesting question in that regard. What is wrong with TERFs? Well, TERFs often dub themselves gender critical, which on the surface of it seems very reasonable. However, the problem arises in the failure of TERF ideology to be similarly sex critical. While the gender binary is obviously a societal construct that is important to criticize and denaturalize, the same is equally true for sex binary, the assumption that everyone can split into two discrete biological sexes, male and female. TERF ideology fails to recognize that women are not homogenous and face many different kinds of intersecting oppression. Black women, white women are not the same, just as straight women and queer womanhood are not the same, just as trans womanhood and cis womanhood. Oh, Danger Fairy, thank you so much. Structural misogyny is complex, and women's oppression can't be reduced to only specifics of biology and anatomy. So what this is arguing is that you can't reduce oppression down to a simple series of bytes, a simple series of nonsense. The idea that it's entirely biology-based doesn't really make sense. I need to move my mic closer. Oh, it's when I turn to read the screen? All right, well, we're going to turn this motherfucker up. How's that? Cool. So the issue here is that their argument is entirely based on the idea that the reason why women are oppressed is because of their bodies. The problem is this reduces women down to bodies. Being a TERF is by definition harmful. And the reason being is that you are a hate group. Trans women and trans feminine people face very serious and very real oppression. They suffer from high rates of violence, homelessness, poverty, sexual assault, and healthcare discrimination. And I want to be very clear here, is anytime you bring up these statistics to TERFs, they will only bring up one of two arguments. Either one, well, we don't want to hate them or hurt them. We just want to put the record straight. We're just talking about what's true, which is bullshit. Or they'll say those are lies, that they're not true, despite numerous studies showing this to be the case. And the joke about this is that they come from the same place. They don't care. They want us hurt. They want us to suffer. And so I think it's really important for us to understand that. So they can go by gender critical, radfem. These are some of the words you should look out for, right? Certain waves of TERF ideology have LGB or LGBT, drop the T. If you hear someone dub the trans people transgender lobby or the cult of transgenderism, also the term TRA, all capitalized. Right? Current TERF discourse focuses a lot on trans children. Think of the children. one of the favorites. And of course, painting trans women as predators. So if you see someone on Twitter and they're basically painting, trans women as potential sexual predators, or talking about how we're mutilating our young girls, spoiler alert. Yeah, TRA's one. That one gets used a lot. I forget what it specifically stands for. If someone wants to throw that up, as long as it's not inappropriate. But if you hear someone making these arguments, it's a thing. Now, the way you deal with TERFs is really simple. We put pressure on them. We make it very clear. Actually, Xander Hall just put out a video a while back. It was a couple days ago. It might have been a day ago, actually, where there was essentially an argument that we need to put more focus on them as a progressive left. And I agree with this wholeheartedly, because the issue is that TERFs are just as strong of a hate group as the KKK, as Nazis, as any other hate group. The difference being is because trans people are so disliked in society, it's very, very easy to ignore it, to pretend it's not there, right? So the best way to deal with these folks is to put the spotlight on them, ratio them, report their accounts, get rid of them, get them off the platform. If you see someone as a TERF on YouTube, it would be a shame if you reported their YouTube channel. Same is true about Twitter accounts. If someone's a TERF, report their account, block them. And if you want, there's a really fun thing that someone just got me called Mega Block. And Mega Block is a little program thing you run your Twitter through, and basically you put a post through it, you put the link through, and what this motherfucker does is it basically not only blocks the person who put out that tweet, but everyone who liked it. It's pretty great. Maybe I'll post that link with this video. What is this? So Victor Dimitri said, when people say LGBTA instead of LGBTQI+, what does that mean? It's really just arbitrary. It really comes down to where you place your focus, right? So I would just say LGBTQIA. A in this case usually stands for asexuals, though I've seen some people also say it's for allies. It depends on how much you really want allies in the acronym. It really just depends on how quickly you want to say it. LGBT plus is acceptable. LGBTQ is acceptable. Usually plus is the best one. A could also stand for those things as well, though I usually put those under asexual, because usually when we're talking about romantic types, we're usually still talking about asexual. Yeah, the I is for intersex, who are awesome people. I don't have a huge problem with ally being in there. I think my concern is I don't want to obfuscate asexual people. I think that's my issue with it. I'm not adverse to it. I just think it obfuscates asexual people. Yeah. So here's the thing. Looking at this, I want to dig a little bit, because this thing doesn't go into enough detail. I think we need to understand some of the language these folks use. So we got this lovely website called, whoop, that's not the right one I wanted. Go back over here, y'all. Nope, not the right one still. There we go. There we go. So 12 of the most common transphobic dog whistles. All right, let's look at these. These could be fun. So I am an actual woman. I am a real lesbian. Okay. You can identify as anything you like. Ah, yes, the loveliness of J.K. Rowling. God, I hate her. Talks about a natal or biological man or woman. I don't have a problem with the term natal if you're trying to like differentiate something, I suppose, if you're talking about like a biological or medical concern. I have a problem with it when it's used by TERFs, because they're using it as a supremacy thing. They use it, it rolls off their tongue. Yeah, LGBT plus does roll off the tongue pretty well, Rev Run. I agree. But when they're using it, they use it with the same tone that people do with white. Like, let's be very clear. Reference to the number 41. This one is 41% of the number of trans people who attempt to end their own lives. Obviously, transphobic people like the idea of trans people dying. Some give 41% discounts to their stores, for example. Yeah. So this is one we get a lot. Ask Thanagor. We will absolutely get references during raids to 41%. Do the 41%. These people are fucking monsters. Let's be clear. Sex is real. No one argued that. Yes, it is, but like gender, it is highly socially constructed and definitely not binary. People say this because they think trans people want to erase the realities of biological sex, when is trans men and AFAB non-binary people who are fighting for gynecological care, for example. Sex is really irrelevant when talking about trans rights. The only person who needs to know my sex is my doctor. True. We have to protect women's spaces. We have to protect women and girls. So again, by the way, I love all their pictures are just people looking disgusted at these concepts. I really appreciate this. Again, so the inference is that we're trying to hurt little girls, or that we are trying to, in some way, shape, or form, get into women's spaces because we just really can't help it. This is nonsense. The idea that trans women are trying to steal their way into women's spaces. Here's the simple fact. Half the time, we're uncomfortable being in them sometimes because we're afraid of these motherfuckers. But the other thing about this is that there's never been an example of any of these bathroom bill issues ever coming up. Are you intact? It's an intact male. What? So this gets into one they might bring up in a minute. I haven't looked at this list, but there's one that comes up very often, and that is, let's be clear, mutilation. One of TERF's favorite ways in terms to use whenever referring to transgender surgeries, specifically gender-affirming surgeries such as vasectomies, things like that, they refer to them as mutilation. This is a reframing in the attempt to disgust you. So an intact male, meaning you haven't had SRS. I believe this is a trans woman. She looks lovely. Also, very mad. Basically, yeah. What they mean is, have you had bottom surgery? And if you haven't, then you couldn't possibly be trans. So this is the weird the weird fucking compromise some of these assholes will make, is they'll pretend for the sake of like looking decent that trans people are real and exist, but it's much smaller number, and they have to immediately go into all the things that do it. In some ways, they're very much like trans medicalists in that way. Basically, you have to meet this criteria. You're not valid trans. It's really dumb. Yup, Rev Run, super straight and super gay are both TERF Dogwhistles. They're both used as ways to essentially delegitimize trans people. In fact, the super straight guy, when his thing came out, directly said, like, I don't see that as a woman. Like, that's his direct quote. Fuck that guy. Those videos still get like hit into high heaven. I have 2 videos on this, and the fact is both of them have gotten disliked significantly. Stay mad. I'm an intact woman. I look great. Fuck these people. Tim and Tiff. Okay, let's get into these. These translate to trans-identified male or trans woman, or trans-identified female, trans man. Don't worry, they don't have a horrendous acronym for people under the non-binary umbrella. Yet. You can see the glaring transphobia in the names. Basically, yeah, it's giving you a name that is misgendering you while also creating an acronym that misgenders you. I mean, in some ways, you have to appreciate just how fucking stupid they are. I mean, Saul, that's exactly right. Most children that are assigned male at birth absolutely are mutilated with the removing of the foreskins. Like, what the fuck? Gender critical. We know this one. We know it well. GC, gender critical. Follows all the big transphobes on Twitter. Are you following? J.K. Rowling. Grant Lindham. This was written before he was kicked off. Fuck that guy. Women's Place UK. Children are being forced to transition. This person's hair is adorable. Also, clearly they're autistic and gay. That's super cool. I really appreciate when someone has a picture that communicates all the things I want to know, because that's super cool. I don't know what the symbol for ADHD is, but I want it. So again, there has never been an example of an underage person that I've been able to find who has been allowed to medically transition as far as surgeries. That just doesn't happen. Now, there is an argument to be made that they are given, right? They are given hormone blockers. Wait, Revron, is it the cartoon, like the ADHD symbol? Is it literally the cartoon brain from How to ADHD? Because if it is, I will totally get a tattoo of that. That little cartoon brain is so fucking adorable. That's so fucking cute. That little brain is so fucking adorable. Anyway, so again, children have never been forced to transition. This has never been a thing. If a kid shows gender nonconforming tendencies and believes in experience that they are the gender other than they're assigned, I'm literally dealing with this with clients as we speak. You go through me, you go through an endocrinologist, you go through their PCP and potentially a psychiatrist if there's any additional confounding factors and medication is needed. And between these 3 to 4 professionals, the kid's parents, and a lot of discussion, spoiler, motherfuckers can get on hormone blockers because you have a group of professionals making a decision. Like, seriously, if I stand in a room of 2 doctors and a psychiatrist, there's literally 3 people with medical degrees and I have a master's. Like, spoiler, the idea that we're not clear on what we're doing or the fact that we don't really consider what the best case scenario is or what's going to happen is nonsense. This is one of the concerns is some people will call these tendencies gatekeeping, and I get concerned about that as well. But I also want to make sure that there's, for example, their identity is concrete for at least a decent amount of time. We are really careful with this shit. And the fact is, when they say we're transing kids, no. There's some random examples of adults who transitioned quickly because they found butchers who are willing to do trans surgeries on them too fucking early. And then those people detransitioned and joined the TERF cult. Because TERFs, might I add, besides working with Nazis, we'll get to that in a moment, the fact of the matter is they also really love, and I want to say really love, to pull detransitioners over because they look great for them. Look, this person detransitioned. This is a huge issue. When there's like 1 detransitioner to like 500 trans people, it's, again, and I'm not saying be mean to detransitioners. Detransitioners should be protected and supported by the trans community because not only are you're no longer part of the trans community, but you're still potentially on the outs with all of your family and everyone else. You're sort of doubly damned. And so in a lot of ways, if someone detransitions, whether it's for social reasons or because they genuinely don't think they're trans, that person should be supported and loved by the trans community. Just my thoughts. So, trans cabal, trans agenda. See, I read this as just the Jewish question. Can I be really clear? I literally just see this as the Jewish question. The fact is that there is a lot of overlap between TERFs and a lot of JQ shit. There's a lot of stuff out there where they're just talking about, like they're literally just talking about, these certain groups are the ones that donate the most to the transes and all this shit. And there's a reason why they do this is because they're pointing it often. Yeah, they align with Pride Boys and Kiwi Farms. So yeah, what do we got? Yeah, trans cabal, trans agenda. Right? So this is Frankie X wrote this. Frankie X, you're the fucking coolest. I'm going to save this. Queer vegan. I don't know if I'm down for veganism, but I do believe it's a good idea. And this thing was good. Frankie Moosh. Cool. I'm going to save that. Let me see if I can find the one other thing I had. Let's see. That's not the one I want. Transphobic feminism and where is it? Let's skate up. There we go. Alert, transphobic feminism and far-right activism rapidly converging. So this was done as of March 20th. So what this article talks about is basically how there's a very real problem in the gender critical movement, and that is they have been infiltrated by Nazis. The problem with fascism is when you start to behave like a fascist, you all start to have the same tendencies. And so I'm not going to go through all of this, but even things like this, respect the only love that bears life. Spoiler alert, if you save your stuff as a trans girl, you can totally knock someone up. It's a thing you can do. Save your eggs. If you're getting a hysterectomy, you can always ask someone to hold a baby for you for a few months. It's a thing. Like, these people pretend that like we're somehow sterilized, like they were fucking eunuchs. So let's take a look at this for a moment. And let's get into it, because I want to make it clear that when we're talking about TERFs, we are talking about a hate group. We are talking about, let's start here. Let me know if you guys can't hear this and I'll read it out loud.
Jennifer Bilek has been a popular figure in the transphobic feminist movement for several years now. Before the rise of the gender-critical movement, she was a longtime member of the transphobic eco-terrorism promoting organization Deep Green Resistance 10, who played a key role in producing the Hands Across the Aisle alliance between self-defined radical feminists and the United States Christian conservative/fundamentalist movement, in the form of Women's Liberation Front. DGR have also been heavily criticized for their intentions to provoke, through attacks on civilian targets they euphemistically describe as infrastructure, what they admit will likely result in a race war. 11.
So what's interesting is that this person has been covered by journalists covering trans hate, as well as widely by trans activists for some time, as a source of growing anti-Semitic conspiracy theories in the gender-critical movement. So one of the examples in here is that, if I remember correctly, let me see if I can find it on Julie Serrano's thing. But Julia Serrano posted a, actually, you know what? I think it's probably on mine. Hold on. I have to figure out where I put it. Give me a second. But there's literally an article that got someone put out real quick, and I think I shared it, but I share too damn much. But basically, there is a thing literally having a gender critical author going, oh, I didn't know I was pointing out Jewish families. Oh, here it is. This is Helen Joyce, a rebuttal. In my book, I demonstrate that mainstream trans activism is not a grassroots movement, but a top-down one. Sounds familiar. One part of the evidence is that rich individuals and foundations make large donations to campaigns that, among other things, lobby to erase biological sex from the law and enshrine gender identity in its place. Interesting language. Some of that part money is tied to campaigns for gender self-ID. I discuss the ACLU, right? American Civil Liberties Union, Human Rights Campaign, and Stonewall in most detail, but there are others. And I give a sense of the funding that comes from rich individuals by discussing three examples. George Soros via the Open Societies Foundation. I love that she literally went to Soros. Just went to Soros. Like, holy shit. Jennifer Pritzker via the Taiwanese Foundation, and John Stryker via the Arcus Foundation. This is in no sense dark money, and I don't say it is. The information is readily available because all such American foundations and charities are legally required to publish details of where they get their money and what they spend it on. I found the information on their websites. This makes a nonsense of Blake's claim that I plagiarized her, that these foundations donate heavily to campaign groups that press for gender self-ID is publicly available information, and she and I are not only the ones who have pointed this out. I didn't deliberately select 3 Jewish donors. It never occurred to me to think of their religions. 2 or 3, it turns out, are indeed Jewish, though that is not something I mention in my book because it's utterly irrelevant. This is called a dog whistle, folks. This is a dog whistle. So let's see. We got our names of names. Kelly J. Minshall, Grant Linham, Harry Miller. Probably add J.K. Rowling to this. And we got evangelical groups, Heritage Foundation, who we know to be absolutely closed, right here, directly tied to Trump. So they're monsters. Cool. American College of Pediatrics, A notoriously Christian lobby group? Yeah, because isn't it the American Association of what is it? The American Association of Pediatrics is like basically the real one. This one's insane. Partners of Ethical Care. Just my point with this is that, and I want to make this very clear, is that understanding these dog whistles is helpful because it keeps you safe online. We've gone through some of them. There are others we can cover in a larger video at some point, but I want to make it really clear. TERFs are a hate group. They are, by their definition, just awful. And the fact of the matter is that they are fundamentally a threat. The world that we want, a world where you may identify as you choose, that you are free, you have liberty to do so, does not exist in their minds. I've said this before in the You Will Never Be a Woman video. The worldview that these people push for, whether we're talking about Nazis or talking about TERFs, is one that is a deterministic hell. That the biological sex that you are stuck with no choice, with no options, you are stuck in that forever. To simply accept it and try to move on or lie down and rot. That list, I'll probably try to post that in one of the links of the video, Moxie. So the simple fact of the matter is this. Understand that when people try to frame TERFs as cartoonish or not a real issue, they are. They have deep roots into Christian organizations because they see them as useful tools to hate the transes. There is evidence to show that they are connecting with Nazis. And let's also be super clear that, if I remember correctly from one of the things I saw on Julia Serrano's feed, there's also just evidence showing that, like, yeah, they're just going full on into conspiracy theories. And there's also a rising homophobia within their ranks. TERFs are a hate movement. I don't know how many times this needs to be said. Do not engage. Do not deal with. If they come onto your feed, guess what? Use that mega block function. I'll put that in the links for stream later. Yeah, Annie, it does seem like they started out as Nazis. They just had a different term. So yeah, why don't we leave that here and just be very clear? Please protect yourselves. I will make sure that the mega block link is both in the description and in the thing. If someone sends you a threat or some other thing, report them and then block it. It'll block. That thing is great. It'll block everybody, including everyone that liked that tweet. Right? What do you mean? How do we get this covered in the mainstream? How do we get this covered? I mean, in some ways it is getting covered. Vox and a few other places have talked about TERFs. The Intercept's okay to my knowledge. Thank you, Tiamat. Well, and remember, second wave feminism came to some really weird fucking conclusions. I remember there being a story about what was it? There was a person going for they were arguing for their doctorate, and their dissertation was basically making the argument or something about how every time a woman in the Western world has sex, it is considered sexual assault because the way society programs women, they are not capable of giving consent. I want you to notice the contradiction in there. Just think about that for a second. Do you get it? Do you hear the contradiction? You're saying essentially that women have no autonomy. Is that not a little fucked up? Yeah, no. Second wave feminism had some good stuff to it. It's also kind of a fucking problem. It didn't go far enough, and it demonized a lot of things that women want to do. Yeah, what the F, right? The TERF QAnon pipeline. Well, yeah. And don't get it wrong, QAnon is also a cult. The cult of Trump that is absolutely Nazi-based. They believe the same thing. It's all about, I mean, really understand this. All of these groups that we're talking about, they just want to fight degeneracy. What do they always go to? That this is going to destroy society. No one fucking their boyfriend or wearing titties is going to destroy society. Thanks for playing. So, with that saying, we'll leave this here, but watch out and protect yourselves. Cool? Hey everybody, thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. You can also ring the bell if you want to be notified of our videos. If you want to help the channel, you can donate at streamlabs.com/transgirltherapist/tip. You also can become a patron at patreon.com/transgirltherapist. For as low as $3, you can support our channel. Thanks for watching.